Hi, I'm Nick Mehta, CEO of Gainsight, and I'm so excited to be at the Coda block party. Just so fired up. This is going to be fun. And to talk about something I'm super passionate about, which is meeting customers. If you don't know, I'm the CEO of Gainsight. We're the customer success company. We're all about helping companies drive more success for their clients, which drives better retention, better expansion, better adoption, better advocacy. And we do that through software for your CSM team, for your product team, for your sales team. But I'm not going to talk about Gainsight. I want to talk about what it means to be a customer-centric leader. And this is all based on a blog post I wrote that became quite popular probably about 2 years ago, turned into a presentation at the SaaStr conference, and now is a Coda doc, which I'm very excited about. And the title of the blog post was How I Meet 500 Plus Customers as a CEO every year. And that headline may grab you because you may not be meeting 500 people a year, or hopefully you're doing even better than I am. But it's something I've been super passionate about. And I just wanted to share exactly what I do to help drive customer centricity at my level and in our company. So let's dive in. Okay, so let's start out just with the fundamental premise. We are all, probably most of you watching, are in some kind of technology-oriented business. You're building AI, you're building SaaS, you're building cloud. But most likely what you're building is used by humans, I think, unless you're building software for robots, then not. But pretty much everyone else is building software that eventually is used by humans. And we at Gainsight, we talk about this idea of human first business, which is really our purpose of our company, is to be living proof you can win in business while being human first. How do you actually think of all of your stakeholders as human beings? Customers, employees, families and friends, community, and your investors are all human beings. Well, you can't really do that if you're not meeting the human beings, either virtually or in person. It's hard to have a human first business without having that direct contact with people. Data doesn't do it. So what I'd love to talk to you about is how you can really drive a more human first, customer centric business by meeting more customers. Now, let me say up front that I actually love meetings. I love meeting people. So I realize I may be a little different than some of you watching. In fact, yesterday I had 18 meetings back to back, and that actually gives me energy. And I know that many of you may not be extroverts like me, but I think what we all share in common is the value of meeting our stakeholders, and in particular, value of meeting our customers, right? And for me, that some of that value is literally satisfaction. Like I said in this tweet a while back, that my satisfaction in life can be depicted as a ratio of number of customers I've met divided by the number of times I was in a meeting looking at spreadsheets. So that's just me. You may be the opposite. But either way, we have a desire and we have a need for our business to meet with our customers. But what shocked me was realizing many CEOs don't turn that need into a reality. And there was this incredible study where they basically studied top CEOs and actually looked at their calendar and basically figured out where they spent their time. And I was shocked that actually the typical CEO spent 6% of time on client meetings, right? And by the way, some of them may be running huge businesses with lots of clients, but still, you can do better than 6%. It's kind of embarrassing, right? So I actually, the first beginning of this project was, 3-4 years ago, I had an intern look at my calendar. And what they found was in my calendar at that time set, and I think it's probably pretty similar, maybe even higher, I was spending about 17% of my time in my calendar with clients, either potential or current clients. So about 3 times the average CEO. Now, how was I doing that? That's what I want to share with you today. It's not some magical strategy. It's just a bunch of systems and processes. And it all comes out with hacking the calendar. It's all about the calendar, right? And as I mentioned, I like meeting people. So obviously my calendar looks, this is an actual screenshot of my calendar. It looks a lot like this. But whether my calendar is different than yours, the reality is we should have more customer meetings. In my case, I color code. So the red are customer meetings, right? So you can see a lot of clients were met that week. And the truth is that, if you meet clients, one of the great benefits, in addition to, for some of you, the joy and the meaning, is the truth is these clients help you get better, right? You meet potential customers that help you get better in your messaging or your sales process. You meet current customers who help you get better with your product and your customer success motion, right? I love our clients that tell me how I can get better, right? I don't want clients to tell me how great I am. I want them to tell me how I can get better. And because of all these meetings, we get better at Gainsight. So how did we turn this mission of taking that 6% and turning it into 17% for as many people as possible? Well, the first beginning of this, as I mentioned, was a blog post and a conference talk, right? But what we said was, as I met with Shashir from Coda and the whole incredible team at Coda, why don't we just take this from a blog post into something that's actionable? And Coda is the perfect platform to take content and make it actionable. And so what we did was we took my blog post, which basically had 10 ways to drive customer meetings. And these 10 ways were, ways to meet prospective clients, existing clients, meet people based on survey feedback, meet people based on online reviews, meet people when you're traveling, pre-COVID, meet people in advisory boards, having dinners, again, maybe a little bit less right now, at company events, at third-party like industry conferences, and probably one of the most important, helping people in job transitions. And so in this Coda doc, we have now created this set of resources to actually help you go through your process and hopefully implement one or more of these 10 steps. So let's dive in. Let's go into the actual doc. So it's live right now. You can go find it, Customer First Toolkit. One of the insights we talk about is how it's all about process and kind of hacking the calendar. So one of the things I do is I actually have our team help me meet customers by helping to kind of draft messages for me to send customers. We call those ghost notes, right? I personalize them, but our sales team, our CS team will draft these ghost notes for me. And every day I've got many, many ghost notes. And then kind of what we've built is a bit of a toolkit that you can actually go and get your own copy of, where you can create your own version of this. And the toolkit has 3 steps. First, you run your own assessment. Where are you today on this client time aspect? How much of your time do you spend with clients? Second is, how do you actually go and create these ghost note template emails to use for various parts of the customer lifecycle? And third, how do you implement those 10 steps that we just talked about? So let's kind of give you a quick tour. So the client time score is one of the great features of Coda. This is like a real app. You can go in, connect your calendar, and it's going to give you a real-time view of where you're spending your time. Super cool. And you can see here that the way it works is you're basically color coding your calendar, which, by the way, if you're not doing that, you really should do that. And then Coda will figure out, okay, based on those color codes, how much time you're spending with clients, internal, travel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you go sync your calendar, you set up your color coding, and boom, you have it right there. It's super, super cool. And then the second thing you can do then is you go in and you write some ghost notes. And by the way, these ghost notes, what I'd recommend is you create some templates, and then you have your sales and CS team create those for individual clients. I even put in a set of 10 tips that I've given our sales and CS team on what they should think about when they raise these ghost notes. There's some jokes in there, like get your spell check right. So obviously intentional misspelling there, how to do subject lines well, how to write good emails to executives. So this is really good, valuable information for your team to read. And then the way it works is you basically create your own doc. You share this doc with the people in your company. Let's say the salespeople, CSMs who want to create ghost notes, and then you create your own template and then connect your Gmail. And what's going to happen kind of magically is your team's going to go create ghost notes. They're going to show up in your Gmail draft automatically. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is mind blowing. So the process we had before was, the reps are going to email my assistant and she drops the draft in. It's super manual. And now this really automated process to let you go interact with clients. And then through that, set up 10 different types of meetings. And so we've given some examples here of, meeting with prospective clients. I've given actual template emails like, hi, I'm the CEO of Gainsight. I heard our teams are talking. I'd love to connect to share some best practices that we have, right? It's not rocket science, but it's nice to have a starting point. And then the same thing, what does an email to an existing client look like? I share our process. We, of course, use Gainsight for this to actually nurture our stakeholders at the executive level. And when should I reach out to the CEO of our client on a regular basis? I share what we do when we get either positive or constructive survey feedback and notes that come from me to set up follow-on conversations. We share what we do with online reviews, where we get an online review, good, bad, and we try to follow up on it, both in the review and then sometimes directly with the customer. We share the process we use to actually set up in-person meetings. Again, that will happen at some point when we're traveling and looking up in a city, which customers are here. You probably watching, you might have been through this. You're flying to a city, get one customer meeting. What a waste of time. Why not meet 5 more customers while you're there? And we set a process for doing that. How do you reach out to your advisory board on a regular basis? What do those messages look like? When you have a dinner event, how do you set that up? What are some good example dinner events to go host? Company events, when you have a customer event that your company's hosting, and how do you actually go navigate that cocktail hour where all the customers are there? Again, that will happen one day soon. And how do you go up to customers and make small talk? I know this sounds pretty prescriptive and maybe a little pedantic, but we want to give people the tools, and then you personalize this to make it work for you. Third-party events. You're at a customer event that you're not hosting, right? An industry event. And, customers at the other side of the room. What do you go talk to them about? And then probably the one I'm most passionate about, how can you help out in a job transition? Your customer just lost their job. They're looking for a new job. They just need to hire somebody underneath them. How do you be there for them? 10 different moments of truth to help your customer. So let's go back then to kind of wrapping it all up, because we've talked about these 10 customer centers. We've given you a way to look at your calendar and see where you are today. We've given you a way to create these ghost notes, these sample messages you can use to send to customers. We've hopefully authenticated your Google account so that now we got your calendar, giving you emails automatically. We've given you these 10 ways to connect with clients and some examples to get started. And hopefully this is going to get you from 6% to 17%. But I'm going to give one final bonus tip because I always like to leave something for the end. At the end of the day, I started out with this idea of human first business. It's all about making connections. They're not a customer, they're a human being. They're looking for a job. They're trying to get promoted. They're just like you, right? There's no difference. Just because you're the vendor and they're the customer, just because you're the CEO and they're director, they're just like you. There's nothing different. And that's what's beautiful about meeting customers is seeing that humanity on both sides. So what have we done today? We've given you the impetus of why you need to do this. We've given you this really easy 3-step process, right? Where you go analyze your calendar today, connect and analyze your calendar. Where are you today? You go create your kind of the assets, the messages, the ghost notes and all that. And then you go start running those 10 plays to meet customers. And I can't wait to see how many customers you meet. In fact, reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and tell me how this has helped you and how many customers you met. But I want to close out with one final bonus idea because I do like to always have one final takeaway. And I'll say this is the one I'm most passionate about. I opened up with this idea of human first business, right? We're trying to meet 500 customers a year, really trying to meet 500 human beings a year. It's the human beings, right? And that's what matters. And so there's a great opportunity in these meetings to make that connection. One thing we do at Gainsight is we always do icebreakers in any multi-person client meeting, whether it's an executive business view, a dinner, a virtual happy hour, and it's just amazing. You ask everyone around the table, what was your childhood dream? What's your superpower that's completely useless if the world was ending, but is still kind of funny nonetheless? By the way, mine is rewriting pop songs to be about SaaS. What's your go-to karaoke song if you were forced to karaoke right now? I know this sounds trite and silly and tied to our value at Gainsight of childlike joy, bring the kid in you to work every day. But there's something really serious about it too, which is really making that connection with people because you're not meeting clients, you're meeting human beings. So I want to tell you the story of one final human meeting that really inspired me. So I asked at an event, what's your go-to karaoke song? And everyone went around the table, talked about their various ones. Mine, by the way, is Lose Yourself by Eminem. I can't sing it all, but I can speak pretty fast. And we talked about go-to karaoke song, and one of our clients, said it was Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. And so afterwards, my assistant and I noticed that, and we sent him a little gift. But the bobblehead dolls of the Guns N' Roses artist, you can see Slash there, and pretty cool, right? But the really cool thing was he sent me a video afterwards of his son being so excited about these toys and playing with them. And yeah, he's a VP, and yeah, he was a 100,000 plus client and the decision maker and the champion, but he's a human being. And everyone you're talking to, all of those 500 client meetings you're going to have are human beings. They're thinking about their job. They're thinking about their next job. They're doing well at home. They're not doing well at the home. They're struggling. They're happy. They're depressed. They're just like you. They're just like me. And I think that's what's really powerful about this. It's not just meeting customers to make your business better and grow faster and all that. It's honestly making you feel better and feel more passionate about what you do and see the people behind it. So I'm so fired up for you to meet more clients, and hopefully this helped you a little bit. So here's to your success. Thanks so much, and looking forward to your questions.
Oh my gosh, Nick, I am feeling so inspired by your human-centered approach. And I'm so excited that I get to be the person to share all of our audience's questions with you. So our first question from the audience is, what is your point of view on closing or building the loop with your customers after the meetings? Do you have a specific follow-up process? Do you meet them a second time? Walk us through that.
Yeah, thank you so much for first of all, for having me here. I'm really excited. I definitely think it's critical to close the loop. Honestly, if you meet customers and don't close the loop, it's like you're making things worse, right? It's like kind of like when you fill out one of those surveys from an airline about a bad experience and then nothing happens, right? And so it's really important to close the loop. Now, practically, that means in a different business, you have different processes. We obviously, I personally take notes in our system, Gainsight, and then track it. And then we have kind of follow-ups to the customer. One of the things I try to do is if there's if we're connecting and then there's a kind of a critical situation of some kind or some issue, which often happens in business, you really try to set the follow-up in that meeting. So for example, you have a call with the customer and they're actually unhappy, which happens, right, about something. And you say, hey, I want to actually put something on the calendar now in 2 weeks. So we check in and see if we're doing better. And I think that actually sends a lot of confidence that you care, right? Not just, oh, I'll get back to you later, but I'm going to put something on the calendar now in 2 weeks. So now the second thing is I think it's very important to share these insights with your team. So one of the best benefits of meeting a lot of clients is not just you learning, but everyone learning. And so I try to do that actually in my company. I do a daily Slack post of every customer I met and what I learned from them and all that. It's just a great way for everyone to learn together.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of your team, what does your team think of the ghost notes?
Great question. Yeah, it's funny because I think initially they were like, some people really like them and some people are like, oh, why are we doing this? And what's the value of it? And now everyone does it all the time. And it's such an effective thing. So I think it's one of those things that, people sometimes feel they're like, oh, I don't want to make the CEO have to go talk to the customer. I feel bad. That's a sign of like me not doing my job. And then they learn, no, actually, we all do this together, right? We're all trying to help our clients together. And it's a kind of sign of success, not a sign of failure to ask for your executives or somebody else. Doesn't have to be your CEO, anyone, to reach out to your clients. That's not a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that I'm really interested in, and this is actually a question that came in from the audience too, is could you share a story of how meeting with a customer really created a big change in your way of thinking or your approach at Gainsight? Like where that customer impact really changed how you approach things?
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those questions you ask where I'm like, God, I have like 5 of those every single day, every day, right? Because that's how do you learn, right? Besides that, So it's funny. I'm gonna peek at my calendar from last week. I'll just literally give you some examples from last week to try to make it very tangible. I had dinner with a customer where this is a common situation where you have an escalation, a problem, like a challenge, right? And I had dinner with the customer who's in the middle of that. And you kind of come up with these stories when you only do very business oriented calls about what's happening. And you're like, oh, the customer's so demanding. They're so hard to work with. The company culture must be bad. Oh, it's so frustrating. And then you get to meet the human behind them. And you're like, oh, I completely understand why they're under so much stress. They're actually dealing with a lot right now. And actually and we can help them. Right. And so I think part of it is like empathy. That definitely is probably the biggest takeaway all the time. Right. But then you get business takeaways. Like last week, I'm looking at, in our industry, we sell into a new type of function called customer success. And I met a couple companies last week that were very early in the process of figuring out not just customer success, but even just building SaaS software, all that. And, one thing you learn is when companies are on a journey, you can't force them to go much faster than they're going to go themselves naturally. So I had a couple calls last week where I said, you know what, we should, like, when a customer is not ready to, buy Gainsight and, be in our world, we shouldn't pressure them or force them. We should like help them, And so you learn a lot about like the natural cycle of what customer, adoption is of your technologies or solutions, right? You just learn how it should work. And then just a third example, I was in an exec meeting that I'd helped set up, and our team did an amazing job, and there was kind of a new group of people presenting. And so sometimes what you get to see is insights about your own team, right? And I literally was like, wow, these new people are amazing at Gainsight. We've hired a lot of new people, and so that was kind of a very you get a different lens into your own people, which is cool.
Yeah. I love this idea of just if we go back to that human, right, we can figure out where those problems are actually coming from and better serve our customers. I love that. The next question we have from the audience is, okay, best case scenario, 500 customers take you up on this offer.
Yes.
How do you, as a CEO, accommodate that with your CEO schedule?
Yeah, I mean, by the way, everyone's different, and I threw this 500 number to be provocative. I think I probably do more like 600 or 700 meetings a year, 800 maybe. So, but I like it. I mean, it's obvious, right? That's sort of, I do it, I enjoy it, it works. It's like that. I kind of think in life, you can think of a Venn diagram of what is your organization need, what are you uniquely good at, and what do you love? And for me, like meeting people is in the center of all of that, right? And so I wouldn't say that everyone has to do 500, but I would say when you really boil it down, 500 is, let's say that's like 10 a week, right? Something like that. Maybe you do It's 4 a week and they're 30 minutes each. That's 2 hours a week. I mean, I definitely don't, I think anyone can find time for that, you know? And so I think I think when you're a leader, honestly, the concept of finding time is ridiculous. You control the time. So especially if you're the CEO, but if you're any leader, you control the time. You don't find time. You're the one who decides what to work on. So essentially what you say with your calendar is what's important. Right? I think Wade said this in the last session, right? Your calendar is your prioritization. And so if you are not finding time for customers, then you don't think they're important. That's the bottom line. And that's okay if that's what you believe. Maybe your business works in a way that doesn't matter. But if you kind of tell people customers are important and they're not on your calendar, you are not in integrity with yourself.
Darn, I was hoping you were going to say there's a time store and you can go buy more time there and add it. And here's how you do it. But I like your
I'm working on that, Maria. We're working on a feature where you can actually will invent more time for you. But it's coming. Yeah, it requires a little bit of like special relativity work. So
sign me up for the beta test.
Exactly.
Excellent. Oh, we've got someone who's saying, you know what? I love these ghost notes. Do you push the process down or up? Like, for example, do your execs have their own ghost note process? Yeah. How about your board?
That's a great question. So yes, people are all using the same concept. We just did it like for myself, but everyone in our company uses this at many layers. And so totally, it's not just about the CEO. Honestly, there's so many, if you get everyone to doing it, it's great. We haven't pushed out the center yet. That's part of our plan. So we before using Coda, we were doing this and doing it a little bit more manually. And so we're going to push that center out to everyone else too. But the process is already scaled out to lots of leaders inside Gainsight.
Nice. And you know, one thing that I'm thinking about, and someone in the audience mentioned this too, is this idea of canned responses, right? Because we've all been on the other side of those emails where it's like, this is clearly a bot. So this person and me, we both want to know, with such a high volume, 500, 600, 700 customers, how do you keep those ghost notes from reading as canned?
100%. One of the critical parts of this is that the email is drafted by the person that works with the customer most closely. So they have a very specific, hey, we are working with these people in your company. Here's the initiatives we're working on. Would love to get your feedback and talk to you about it and get your input, et cetera. So that's the draft, right? But we don't just send that because then I want to personalize it further. So I then look at that email and I look at two different things. I look at, okay, what business value could I add to this email? For example, what blog post did I write recently? And I often will put a blog post in the PS at the bottom of the email. PS, here's a post I wrote recently that could be interesting. So what content would show this person that, number one, this is not a canned email, but number two, more importantly, we have value to add, right? So that's one thing I do. Second thing is, what can I do on the personal side to personalize this email? Maybe I know where this person is based. I can say something about that city, or we share something in common, classic stuff by looking them up on LinkedIn. So I never send an email just like, auto send. I'm always like, how do I make this great? Because totally. When you're doing this, it reflects on your brand, as a leader. So you want it to come off the right way.
Yeah. The next question actually is connected to this idea of that branding bit. So the next question we have is, have you seen your people first mentality trickle down throughout Gainsight?
Oh, totally. Human first, people first. We call it human first. It's everything Gainsight. It's like every single meeting, all discussions, honestly, I think that's why people work at our company. I mean, there's a ton of good companies out there that all make money and grow. And we're fortunate to be in this booming time of unicorns and things like that, right? There's a ton of those. Gainsight's great, but there's a lot of other ones too. I think the thing that's unique about us is the human first kind of concept, and people really believe in it. And our whole company, the mission of the company is to be living proof you can win in business while being human first. So we want to prove that we can be a very successful company and a company people look up to, but do it in a way that with these human first values. And so people are really motivated by that.
That's amazing. I'm motivated by that. The next question that we have is, have you seen your ghost notes affect the relationship between your team and the customers that you're reaching out to? What does that look like?
Yeah, good question. I don't know the underlying question here, but I will try to speculate. Okay. I think that there's positives and there's potential negatives you have to avoid. So the positive is, you're building a relationship, hopefully with somebody that maybe the team doesn't have access to, right? Maybe the team's working at the director level at the client. You're going to this, CEO or the CMO or the chief, in our case, chief customer officer. And so that's great. So you're probably extending the relationship inside the company. Now, at the same time, what we want to do is not disempower your team. So what you shouldn't feel like is, oh, okay, you should come to me and don't go to my team, right? That's a bad thing for everyone involved, right? And so that's where it's very important. Ideally, you're reaching out to a level that the team doesn't have access to. So it's not duplicative what the team's doing. You're doing it in coordination with the team. So it doesn't feel like there's mixed messages coming into the client. And then potentially, if you get that call, you're bringing your team on the call so that they can then meet your executive that they weren't able to reach and maybe show how awesome they are, because you hopefully have an awesome team. And then they build a relationship for the future.
Yeah, I love it. That it really places you as that servant leader, that coach. Like, I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to just set you up to do, I don't know sports at all, but like, I assume a layup is something that's a thing.
That's good enough for me. Exactly.
So great. Perfect. You and I, we'll sign up for the NBA. The next question that we have is this is actually a 3-part question. How many ghost notes do you need to send to get 500 customer meetings? What's your hit rate? And does that make your EA kind of have their hair go gray and like come out in the process?
Yeah, great question. So on the first one, it's interesting. I was thinking about that recently, and the sad answer is pre-Coda, we weren't instrumenting this enough to really track it. I mean, we could track it if we went through all the emails very manually, but if you ask me for a gut feeling on it, gut feeling is probably about, 50%. It's a very high hit rate, extremely high, but not 100. So let's say it's 1,000. It's something like maybe 3 to 1, 2 to 1. Does my EA get crazy? If Erica was on here, she's an incredible, like just like heart and soul of Gainsight, and she would laugh. The process has taken work. Actually, interestingly enough, not so much in sending the emails to the clients, because that actually can be streamlined, and the Coda doc hopefully helps everyone. You'll get a little better at that. That part I actually don't think is that big of a deal once you spend time on it. It's actually getting people to write the notes and then write them write good notes, right? And by the way, that's not just her hair being pulled out; it's me too. It's a bit of a grammar test for your company. So I definitely have found a lot of like, oh, wow, is that really the email you're sending out? So there's some of that. There's some of like getting them to do it in a way that makes sense. That's like a good email. Like that's why we spend some time like trying to write some rules down of like, okay, here's some tips. Don't write a 6-paragraph email and stuff. By the way, the nice thing about that is I think you're also teaching your team on how to communicate with executives. They don't always know that, right? So.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite parts of your doc is that your 10 steps of like, here are all the things to be thinking about, because it makes it so explicit and so clear and really sets people up for a 100% chance of success when they're writing those ghost notes. Amazing.
Totally.
Ooh. The next question we have is, how easy was it for your team to pick up this process you built and then run with it?
Yeah, I think that I think it was pretty easy. I mean, on the grand scheme of things, because this started, before we did it through Coda, we did it a little more manual way. And I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And frankly, it's just one of those things that we're just like, hey, we should do this. And we just were like, let's do it. And then I think that just educating people about, okay, this is the process, this is how it works. And then obviously you bring new people on, you have to educate them. But this is one of the highest ROI things we've done in the history of the company in terms of effort versus our return. So.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, what a great way to end our conversation. Huge thank you to you, Nick, for all of your insights, this brilliance, and also huge thank you to our audience for all of your wonderful questions.